Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure personally and as president and founder of the Arab International Women's Forum and on behalf of our board to welcome you this afternoon to our virtual seminar held in partnership with our partners, Space Intelligence, under the theme Next Generation Climate Action, Green Skills for Sustainability Leaders. Today's event is central to the Arab International Women's Forum Climate Sustainability and STEM Advocacy Program this year. It has been our keen commitment, and it reaffirms our keen commitment to inspiring and supporting the next generation of climate actionists and green tech innovators through education, employment, and entrepreneurship. Indeed, today's event explores the need for core green skills in the next generation of sustainability leaders in the green jobs of the future. Green skills are defined by the OECD simply as skills needed in a low-carbon economy, which will be required in all sectors and at all levels in the workforce as emerging economic activities create new or renewed occupations. The ILO has defined green jobs as decent jobs that contribute to preserve or restore the environment, be they in traditional sectors such as manufacturing and construction, or in new emerging green sectors such as renewable energy and energy efficiency. Green jobs are not jobs that will become available in the distant future. They are jobs that are already being created, and they are the jobs that have long existed, but are rapidly changing as a transition to net zero progresses. As the OECD has found, about a fifth of the workforce in the OECD countries are already employed in green jobs. We also know that existing jobs are getting greener as industries and businesses adopt more sustainable practices and integrate environmental considerations into their operations. According to the ILO, an estimated 24 million new jobs could be created worldwide by 2030 if the right policies to promote a greener economy are put in place. Green jobs are everywhere. They span every industry. And as LinkedIn's Global Green Jobs report has set out, can be categorized as green jobs, greening jobs, and non-green jobs. We know that the fastest growing green skills are in ecosystem management, environmental policy, and pollution prevention. Equally important for a fair and equitable, inclusive, and effective green transition are emerging green skills, such as clean energy and renewables, sustainable finance and construction, software, tech and innovation, as well as data science, urban planning, sustainable agriculture techniques, and food systems. Coming to our region, green skills are especially essential in the MENA region if we are to meet the goals to reduce carbon emissions and build climate resilience. The region faces pressing climate-related challenges that are exacerbating social and economic inequalities, as well as severe water scarcity, desertification, and a high dependency on oil. However, the MENA has significant renewable energy potential with abundant solar and wind resources, which require expertise in renewable energy technologies. The MENA region's high youth unemployment rates and the need for workforce modernization underscore the importance of creating new job opportunities in green sectors. Ultimately, a green-skilled MENA workforce with skills in water management, sustainable land practices, and renewable energy can address sustainability challenges whilst at the same time generating much needed economic stability, diversification, and growth. So investing in green skills is essential for sustainable development, economic stability, and environmental resilience in the MENA and worldwide. Globally, in the green economy of the future, green skills are not relevant only to those working in renewables, they are relevant to us all, to multiple sectors and spheres, giving rise to the urgent need to upskill and reskill workers to ensure that nobody is left behind. Distinguished guests, through this important event this afternoon, and in all our valued partnerships with PepsiCo, Pfizer, PwC, and Space Intelligence, and together with our institutional partners, Wiser at Masdar in the UAE, as well as the World Bank, the Arab International Women's Forum pledges to continue our work in this critical space, to bring stakeholders together, as we're doing today, to concretely address the green skills gap and to mainstreaming awareness and opportunities for green skilling through the lenses of gender equality, education, entrepreneurship, and importantly, employability. Towards this aim, we have prepared an outstanding program for you today, welcoming a most distinguished lineup of speakers who are all leaders in sustainability, climate, and the green economy, representing organizations that include the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the OECD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, as well as several other important organizations, and of course our partners, PepsiCo and PwC. Allow me now to introduce very proudly my co-chair for this opening session, Professor Ed Mitchard, co-founder and chief scientist of Space Intelligence, who will tell you more about Space Intelligence valuable, vital work in creating the ecosystem where green innovation can thrive and where green skills can be fostered and leveraged for the good of people, planet, and importantly, future prosperity. Also joining us today is my good friend Nadira Shamlu, valued AIWF board member, former senior advisor to the chief economist at the MENA region at the World Bank, and a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Nadira will be kindly with us for the duration of today's session and will be delivering our closing remarks and summing up our deliberations for today. I thank you all for your kind attention. Professor Mitchard, may I pass it over to you, please?
Thanks very much for that introduction, Haifa. I've been delighted or had the pleasure to meet Haifa online quite a number of times now, and I'm always inspired when I hear her speak, and I'd love to congratulate her and the Arab International Women's Forum on all they've achieved since she founded it. And thanks to all of you for attending. It's been my pleasure at Space Intelligence to be able to support this event, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the different speakers. I don't want to bore you, but just a tiny bit of my background, because that sets some of the context for what Space Intelligence is about. So I've spent about 20 years now working on developing better ways of mapping forest cover and forest change and the carbon stored in forests. I spent a PhD measuring trees all around tropical Africa. Measuring trees on the ground is the way you find out how much carbon is in those trees, but I then worked to develop ways of correlating that information on forest carbon to satellite data sets, including from satellites that were not put up in orbit specifically to look at forests, but actually collect quite useful data. I spent a career in academia developing many different ways of using satellites to map the world's shrinking forests, and to be honest, found that depressing and felt like I wasn't really part of the solution. I was just someone on the side developing methods to show the world's problems. I had a colleague at the University of Edinburgh who felt likewise, Dr. Murray Collins, who's my co-founder, and back in 2018, we set up this company, Space Intelligence, with the idea of being more actively involved in forest conservation. So at Space Intelligence, we have a mission to enable zero deforestation and degradation and support mass forest restoration by producing the highest quality nature data products. We've built up a team and a set of technology to do exactly that. So in the room behind me and watching this webinar at various places in this building in Edinburgh, in Scotland, we have just over 50 employees who are all dedicated to that mission, trying to make really high quality maps that provide the needs of our clients. And our clients are people who are trying to protect or restore forests through carbon finance, so carbon credit projects, or through other conservation projects, and they need high quality data in order to create those credits or support the funding, the money that needs to flow from the developed world, the developing world, in order to protect forests and enable their restoration. I'd like to say a bit about why we are supporting the Arab International Women Forum. So we were introduced through one of our board members, Fatima Haj, who is head of climate for HSBC Asset Management, in addition to providing very useful advice on our board. And I believe a friend of Haifa and introduced us, and Murray and I instantly clicked with Haifa and saw that this was an amazing organization doing some great work in a region that's changing very rapidly. So Haifa covered some of this, but for me as an outsider, it's obvious that the Middle East is changing very rapidly from a social standpoint. It's changing rapidly from an economic standpoint. Many of the states have traditionally relied a lot on oil and gas revenue, and that is going to change very rapidly over the coming decades. And clearly that transition is also going to cause social upheaval, but it's an opportunity where empowerment and opportunities for women and girls in particular, but for all of society in that region can rapidly change towards what I hope is a developed, green and stable economy. It's also a region that is going to change rapidly due to climate change. It's already one of the hottest parts of the world where people live, with many of the cities that experience the biggest climate extremes, and clearly global warming is going to cause even more difficulties in that region. And I think we all know that when climate changes, the people who suffer most, poorest and vulnerable members of society, and that's going to be something where support from all kinds of organizations is necessary to ensure that the losers of climate change are not those who can do least about it. At Space Intelligence, we don't think we can solve all the world's problems. We can help in a small way through supporting events like this, and we can help through achieving our mission, because clearly the more trees there are in the world, the more local climate is stabilized, protection from extreme events, and the more carbon is locked up in trees, the less is in the atmosphere to cause global heating. So we hope through those combination of things we can contribute in our own way to helping solve this existential problem that facing the world over the next 50 years. So thank you so much. I'm delighted this event can be kicked off, and I'd like to hand over now to Nadra Chamlu, who is the former senior advisor to the chief economist at MENA, the World Bank, and an AIWF board member.
Yes, good day. Thank you so much for this introduction, and my hat off again to AIWF and all of its partners for really organizing yet another exciting session. I am really looking forward to all the speakers. I'm looking forward to learning the what, the why, and the how of skills that women need to acquire in order to be able to be lockstep with this changing world. It's climate change and green technologies are the challenges of our times. And I'm delighted that AIWF with its partners with Space is taking a very first or even a very strong step in bringing this topic to light. As mentioned, my name is Nadra Chamlu, and I have been with AIWF, I think, from the beginning. And I'm delighted to be a board member and be also able to contribute whenever I can on the linkage between women's economic empowerment, economic skills, economic opportunities, and how they will be able to play a leadership role as well as a very critical contribution to the society. With that, as Haifa mentioned, I will be back at the end to sum up some of the key takeaways from this session. And I look very much forward to this really rich discussion. And with that, if I may hand over to Dr. Stephanie Erb and our other valued speakers for the first panel. And please join me in a virtual show of hands as we launch our discussion. And thank you very much, and I see you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadra. So I'm Stephanie Earp, the AI Research Lead at Space Intelligence, and I'll be moderating our first panel session, which is on AI innovation, skills for the green sector. We will discuss technological innovation, what we need for the green skills in engineering. First, we have Ruba Azubi, is a re-engineered engineer, a green advocate, development strategist, sustainability communicator, and partnership builder, who founded She Grows in Jordan and is now the Climate, Energy and Environment Lead for the Levant for the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. Secondly, we have Elena Sennell, who is an internationally recognised social entrepreneur and award-winning founder of Teens in AI, which she launched at the United Nations AI for Good Global Summit in 2018. And Teens in AI is there to promote diversity and inclusion within the AI industry and incorporate future-orientated skills in today's educational frameworks. Finally, we have Hassan Halawi, who is the General Manager of Elite Agro Projects, a leading specialized agriculture construction company in the GCC in Africa, driving innovation in the agriculture sector with a portfolio of successful projects spanning over 8 countries. So thank you to our speakers for being here today. Let me start with you, Ruba. What would you say are the biggest challenges in going from small green tech innovations to large practical solutions and the technical skills that are needed for that?
Thank you. Good day to all, and thanks for the invitation. Green transition is a global trend. It's a global issue, but we need to act on it locally. So one of the biggest challenges is the inability to cascade and customize all the climate, low carbon, green economy, sustainable development objectives into practical local solutions. Specifically, climate change, because it does touch on energy, water, food security, health, everything urban, needs to be localized. And the action, although governments set policies, the action comes from the private sector, from civil society, and from communities, from the people themselves. So regardless of how much we really understand the fastly changing global climate diplomacy, which is usually manifested in what we call the COP events, I believe that what really matters is acting on the ground. And acting on the ground is done by proper education, good awareness, and in-depth understanding of our own challenges and opportunities. Having worked on this in Jordan mainly, and then on the regional level in the Levant, I believe that the biggest challenges are aligning all these priorities so that policies, regardless of the sector they enable, whether they're water policies, labor policies, educational policies, all policies are meant to include and boost the skills, enable innovation, and create more opportunities, not necessarily through full-time jobs, but actually enable the young people to create their own opportunities. That alignment is everybody's responsibility. So we can't claim it on the public sector per se. So the demand for the green transition usually comes from private sector, from companies, whether they are large or small or medium. It usually comes from government because there are usually obligations and also costs that need to be reduced. And the supply usually comes from our universities, colleges, training institutes. And in between, there are many important catalysts that try to enable the transition. So entities like, the Women's Forum, the AIWF, or NGOs, or accelerators and incubators, financing institutes, donors, media, these are all catalysts. And, when it comes to technology, AI, the whole digital transformation is considered to be a huge enabler, because that's where you could expedite, you could inform through data analysis, and you could also enhance awareness amongst a larger population. So this marriage, if you wish, between sustainability or green transition and technology is very important, but it has its own costs. So how do we make sure that this coupling takes into account the footprint that the technology industry puts on our environment, on our resources, and so on? And more importantly, that the ethical and social impact side are well embedded, because one of the key challenges from the inability of countries to cascade the global transition, green transition, energy transition policies towards more localized approaches is that we will have something that is not ours, so low sense of ownership, and thus low sustainability, weak sustainability. But more importantly, we will also end up with less impact on the ground. We will probably increase any inequalities that already existed, any poverty, inequalities. All of these issues get magnified when we do green transition in a non-localized manner. So I believe challenges could be too many, could sound like complex, but I do believe that the opportunities and the priorities that are identified locally will always lead the way and will always take us where we should all be targeting a more sustainable planet for the coming generations to live on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Reba. That was excellent. And that leads on actually quite nice into a question I have for Elena. So what key skills do you think we need to leverage the technology and AI in this green sector?
Thank you so much for having me again at the forum. And of course, as you probably will know, I'm very passionate about advocacy and championship for women. And so the programs we run very much aim at young people, with a very high proportion of girls joining our programs. And for me, this is very important, because people who develop technology still end up being white men sitting in Silicon Valley developing this. And it's really important to bring this topic to the attention of the young people, because we need more young people to build things that they're really passionate about. And of course, when it comes to skills, it's very important to have the combination of the ethics that Ruba has just mentioned, the technology skills, but also understanding, where this would apply with sustainability and climate causes and climate practices. But at the same time, it probably, as Ruba mentioned, with ethics or with development comes responsibility. So the ethics bit is probably something that we often overlook. And it has been highlighted to us very recently, the environmental cost of building these models and AI systems, which is something that is quite concerning. And when it comes to us building on top of OpenAI, Claude, or various other large language model systems or other AI systems, we do come across some of the horrifying statistics in terms of the weight, the footprint. So we have to be very careful. It's almost like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we see a lot of potential with AI systems and AI in general, sort of having a really positive impact on helping us tackle some of the climate issues. But on the other hand, how do we make sure the systems themselves are built in the environmentally friendly way? So it is something for the current generation and for the future generation to tackle. Without everyone's voices being involved and voicing their concerns, it is not something we will be able to get a handle on. Super important when it comes to skills, take into account all of these matters together.
Great, that's really interesting. Thank you, Elena. We've talked quite a bit now about the broad sense of green AI and tech. Hassan, I'd like to bring you in here. From a kind of more agri-tech perspective, what are the biggest opportunities for AI and tech in your industry?
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I believe that the AI is being more of playing the catalyst role in enabling us to process the enormous data that we're able to collect now from the various import sources. Now, with the technology prior to getting to AI, we went to different levels of gathering different bits of technology that we built up in the last 15, 20 years, including the Internet of Things that enabled us now to plant sensors and to give us more insights from our fields. With the more advancement of technology brought us, and now with the defense industry, technologies are becoming more available for agriculture. We have now access to geospatial data. We're now able to collect satellite imagery and enormous amounts of data that can give us foresights in terms of weather update, weather forecasting of yields, and all this data is now available to us. However, processing it manually or processing it in the traditional sense is not possible. What the AI has provided us with, and of course coupled with machine learning and the data analytics, is that it has provided us with a high level of accuracy to be able to grasp this data, process it, and come up with data-driven intelligence that can optimize our costs, helps us anticipate any outbreaks and diseases, helps us anticipate changes in weather, so that we can optimize our production and also, more importantly, reduce the production costs that we have. And these are very important factors, because you mentioned also, we've spoken before earlier, the ladies have spoken about sustainability. Agriculture today has one of the biggest carbon footprints in the world, and utilizing it to reduce our consumption of water, limited resources such as water, arable land, and to not overpollute the earth and the groundwater with fertilizers. These technologies has helped us reduce our irrigation water, helped us to make it more efficient, helped us to have more precision agriculture in terms of analyzing where to use these fertilizers, where to do spot treatment in case of pest outbreak, and all that, and on the long term will help us prepare to meet the SDG goals. Give a small example from the field that you see behind me in the background now. Today, the work does not allow me to demonstrate it more, but today from this field, I can monitor it from my office, far distant city. This is one of our fields in Serbia, one of our farms. I can do a satellite remotely. I can access the fields via satellite. I can read the vegetative index. I can read the water index of the field at very high accuracy with a less than 3% margin of error. And I can understand and automatically talk to machines over there in the field, telling them if I have to reduce the water input, if we can increase it, or if we have spotted any discrepancy in the vegetation, we can send either a drone or we can send a patrol car to verify in that particular coordinates if we have any incident that's happened. So all these technologies that are available to us now are really helping us as growers and also any other growers in the world to have this technology at their fingertips to assist them in what used to be very tedious and very costly exercises they had to go through before. The obstacles or the challenges we still face in all of this is that there is still a bit of like a wall in between the tech people and the growers and the agricultural workers or the agriculture sector in particular, because agriculture is a very traditional space. It's an industry that goes on from generation to generation. And the AI has its own challenges because the AI runs through different models and comes up with its own pattern of things that is not in line with the traditional way of how we work. So adopting it by traditional farmers does not come easy. And that's where institutions, R&D stations, and educational facilities should basically bridge that gap into bringing in the awareness of these changes to farmers so that it becomes easier for them to adopt it and take the risks that are linked with the adoption of technology and decisions that are artificial intelligence driven. Another challenge that we face is the data collection. Data is really the source for any artificial intelligence or machine learning model to be successful. So to train our models, we need to have access to data, and data is not available till today. I know that internally from our organization, by the time we had developed our own platform, it took us a lot of time to be able to gather this data, but it's still scattered. And for us, at least it's siloed to us. We don't have access to data from other organizations, and there's no platform that's available for all stakeholders to share these data, and there's no guidelines for it. I believe that the government in Abu Dhabi is trying to organize something like on that level for all stakeholders so that they can share data and keep it protected, keep its integrity in place. However, give access to companies or to people like me who are interested in accessing it to have access and train our data for it. And yep, I think that's all from me, Dr. Stephanie.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hassan. That was fascinating. We've got about 10 minutes left of our panel, and then we'll move on to Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can ask them at the end of our panel session. One final question that I had for all of you to think about and answer, we can start with Ruba maybe, is how do you kind of best identify and engage with mentors in this sector? You're all obviously very well, professionals and very well developed in your career, but how for someone as a student or a young female starting in this, what would be the best way to get the skills and professional development needed for this area?
Thanks, Stephanie. This is the border area between our passion to empower women and the green transition and our passion for our planet. So women in general are very involved in the sustainability agenda. Their natural inclination towards more sustainable management of resources makes them great to work in this sector, but they're also hugely impacted by, for example, climate change and consequences from a health perspective and from productivity perspective and so on. So working with women and paying a forward, let's say, in terms of supporting each other, I find it a very important step. I know many professional women in the green sectors that are willing and happy and are already doing mentorship. I believe that certain guidance in certain moments of somebody's life can really make a huge difference. Women enjoyed part of the world do not have any issues with going to STEM education. We have highly educated population in general, but specifically women. Jordan, for instance, has one of the highest engineers per capita, ratio in the world. I think what really matters is how do we also encourage them to get involved in the productivity side of the story, so the economic participation. And I think that's a challenge across the board. Nevertheless, mentorship is one of the mechanisms through which we could inspire, we could guide, and we could also help them find resources and answers to many questions and challenges that they face. There are a few networks. She Grows, you mentioned when you introduced me. Thank you for that. I consider myself their mentor. It's now youth-led. It's led by young female engineers and agriculture engineers and scientists who are interested or already working in the agri-tech and food security sector. And they're identifying ways now to institutionalize the initiative. So instead of being an informal network, they would like to be more institutionalized in a foundation or an NGO or a for-profit, because they could see the value of bringing people together, and they could see that the future belongs to those who recognize the climate, the technology aspects of agriculture. So we cannot continue doing things or business the way we used to do. We have to look at the new technologies. Sometimes, new approaches are not always imported. I think people who have visited Petra in Jordan could recognize the indigenous and ancient practices there around water harvesting and drainage systems. So sometimes it is really going back to what really works, what makes a more efficient use of resources, what makes life better. But there are many other initiatives on women in renewable energy, on women in environment. And I believe we still need more, and we need to promote these initiatives more, because on one hand, people say these are multiple platforms and, we don't know where to join. But I think each of them can make an impact on specific sectors. It's important that we complement each other, though. So I still dedicate part of my time to volunteer as a mentor to many startups and to many young males and females. And I believe that empowering them to take this forward is what really matters. So I recall I was in Kenya a couple of months ago, and I just posted that I was in Kenya and I met a few young ladies there. And then I received from one of my mentees that, she works in a company that would like to help those in Kenya. The company is Jordanian, but would love to see if they could help those Kenyan young ladies. So it is something that it's a ripple effect, right? So whatever you cultivate today through mentorship, through engaging with youth, going to pay forward. And I believe, being in touch with young people gives me the reality check, because with time you tend to feel that you know everything, most of the things that are going on. You have this long experience, but this is probably very important, but it doesn't mean that you really know the needs of the new generations, and you really know how they would like to shape their contribution to the green transition. So I think it's a call for also all of you to start thinking of how could we support, how could we partner with platforms and networks, so that we can add value to all these amazing women and men out there, because I do believe in men championing women empowerment as well. So just so Hassan doesn't feel bad.
I think that's a great segue. Hassan, do you have any thoughts on this as well?
Yes, I do. First of all, in terms of how to learn it or how to get to it, I always tell, and I publish a lot of links for all the young generation, not only the young, also for incumbent generation, that we all have to learn. We all have to keep up with the technology and with the advancements, so that we are still on top of our work and still competitive in our businesses. So luckily, the information is really readily available online. There are so many courses, free courses, that are published by the big tech companies, that whereby you can get your certification into understanding what you need to do and how to do at least the analytical thinking, to understanding the tech, understanding how it works, and start implementing it into your daily life, and professional life, so that you can leverage your way into adopting it in your career. This is very important. I always try to encourage colleagues and also startups that come to us for advice, or try to pitch some of their ideas to us. And another very important aspect, and this is something, because since we mentioned about the startups and about people who are trying to get into the space, is to understand what is readily available here. So in a lot of cases, I see when we're on panel judging startups or judging people who are small entrepreneurs who are pitching for big ideas, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There is no need for you to recreate or write the code for the AI model. There are now let's talk about the big tech companies. So if you go to Google, Azure, Microsoft, or AWS, there are libraries full of codes that you can utilize, that you can use, and that will help you in bringing your idea in a much easier way, so that the innovation is still yours, the idea is still yours. However, there are so many available resources that are ready for you to just tap into and make your journey faster and more efficient, so that whatever idea you are bringing can be implemented quickly and efficiently. That's the most important message I always like to emphasize for entrepreneurs, and also for the young ladies who would like to go into this space. There are really no barriers to this except yourself. It requires time. It requires just some dedication towards it. And secondly, you can always reach out either to me, to Ruba, to Elena. I think we're always happy to support and to answer, if anything we're able to answer, to so that we can guide them into turning their ideas into something tangible. From my side, I started this journey personally in almost 4 years during COVID. And last month, we launched our own AgTech platform using, I'm not a coder or by any means. However, this helped me to putting these building blocks in a way whereby we just needed 2 young engineers to just help us link the bridges into coming up with a very nicely done, very efficient, at least catered to our needs. And I know these are the pain points for many farmers or agriculture companies like us, so we can address them. We linked into low orbit satellites, we linked into an existing libraries online so that we can be efficient in answering and turning around questions. And for that aspect, I just like to answer Mr. Raghda, because this is relevant to a question she put on the panel. I know we go to the panel at the Q&A later, but this is essential to it. Yes, the AI can answer questions or take decisions on our behalf. However, we would not enable that until we reach a very high level of accuracy. And we can always put a second level of reviewing the decisions before pushing it automatically to whoever is implementing it, so that we are confident that the AI does not take a wrong decision on our behalf.
Great. Thank you very much, Hassan. Elena, I would like to get onto some questions, but I see while everyone's been talking, you've been putting some great resources into the chat. So that's excellent. So I recommend everyone to look in the chat and all the resources that Elena's put in there, because there are some brilliant ones in there as well. But I would like to move on to the questions now. We've had quite a few. I don't know if we'll be able to get through all of them, but I'll try and get through as many as possible. So the first one from Sana was, I'm wondering if there are efforts on the ground concerning a general framework or global agreement or basics to consider regarding AI and climate change, specifically concerning ethics, natural resources usage, humanity, that may lead to some sort of accountability.
I think this question alludes to some of the regulation practices that we're all kind of expecting to come to force, but they're very slow coming because regulation in general is very, very slow. I would recommend you look at some of the recent EU AI acts. I know the government of UK will be putting something together very soon as well. I am not aware of any particular regulation in the Middle East, so probably Ruba will be your best port of call for anything related to this. But I definitely know this is a very hot topic, and regulators across the UK, US, and Europe are looking into regulating AI models in general, AI systems. And of course, we're very much interested in seeing how this is going to impact all the conversations we're having in relation to climate, because of the detrimental effect and the impact we're seeing of models on the climate itself. So this is definitely coming, and we're waiting for more and more discussions to happen in respect of this. So, but Ruba probably has more insights on the Middle East.
Yeah, just quickly, thank you, Elena. So there are 2 types of those ethical and sustainability, let's say, standards or principles in relation to AI. Part of it is integrated into regulations and legislation so that they could be enforced. And then those are mostly focused on, privacy, personal, let's say, freedom and access to data protection. But the let's say, enforceable parts are usually put into guidelines, and guidelines are not legally binding. They are usually very voluntary. And usually the UN organizations and international organizations have sort of a very comprehensive set of principles and guidelines that need to be further cascaded and tailored for specific contexts. So in Jordan, I think we do have something related to AI ethics, but it is not a legislation. It is more of a guidelines. And, this whole thing is very new in our part of the world and even globally. So I think the climate and green dimensions are still not well integrated and not seen as part of the overall ethical framework. So I think it's very important to lobby globally towards how do we integrate these aspects. I know that the UK had in its technology and innovation strategy specifically mentioned energy consumption because it does contribute to emissions. So energy efficiency within the technology digitalization sectors is very important. And I don't think we have something on the ground that shows how do we enhance the efficiency of energy, but also reduce the footprint, because there's also the electronic waste disposal and recycling, and there are many hazardous substances that could be associated. So it is what they call a life cycle approach that needs to be followed beyond just saying, oh, well, we're going to help the green sectors and the transition by offering softwares and solutions and technology. We have to look at our own footprint as well. So there's very little examples like pilots, but I think there's a lot going on in the world on establishing the principles. I'll share some links as well.
Yeah, that'd be great, Ruba. In the interest of time, let's try and quickly get through a couple more questions. This has been a really interesting conversation, and there's quite a lot of people with questions on here. This next one is, what are the main key drivers that have competitive factor when applying AI and sustainability in engineering?
I read that question. I just wasn't quite, couldn't understand what exactly did he mean with it. To the drivers that are demanding the AI or requesting it are mostly saving up on resources, unreplenished resources that we have, which is arable land, water, and in lieu of the climate change, we're having changes that are in the environment that the farmers are not able to cope up with or understand. So to forecast this and to be able to have if the AI can give us better forecasts of what the weather is going to be like in the coming months, where the farmer is having his crop planned, it will help him in terms of selecting the best crop, best seed, which variety he should put. That's more heat tolerant, that's more drought tolerant. So this helps in both ways. This helps in terms of the sustainability, and it also helps in preservation of the resources, and also in terms of the viability, because something I always say, there will be no sustainability until sustainability becomes profitable. No farmer in the world, and up till today, we have 60% of our food, or almost more than 60% of our food, grown by small stakeholder farmers. And to ask these guys to be sustainable, and rightly so, sustainability needs to become profitable for them to adopt the sustainable practices. And I hope AI, with technology that's bringing, as demonstrated and seen in India, by the way, which has the highest adoption of technology, although these are small farmers, a lot of them, for many, are illiterate. However, the rate of adoption has become very high because it became easier for them. We have, fortunately, the rural population is having a much higher age than the urban population. So it made their life easier. So they started adopting it, they started embracing it. And now it's becoming part of their daily life. So I think this is how, not just AI, any technology can support.
Great, thank you, Hassan. So unfortunately, we've come to the end of our Q&A session. There's a few questions left. I'm sure that Elena, Ruba, and Hassan would be happy to follow up on those.
Sure.
But thank you, everyone, for all those questions. Sorry we couldn't get through more. So that is the end of the first panel. We finished just on time. I'd like to just thank the speakers again for their brilliant and really interesting insights. And now I'm pleased to hand over to Dr. Alexis Moya, who is our Customer Solutions Lead at Space Intelligence and chair of our third session, Entrepreneurship and Gender Equality for Climate Solutions. So Alexis, over to you and our speakers for session 3. If you can turn on your cameras and join us. And thank you again, the speakers, for the last section. You can turn off your cameras now.
This is the second panel. We'll be discussing entrepreneurship and gender equality for climate solutions. I'm Dr. Alexis Moyer. As Stephanie said, I'm our customer solutions lead here at Space Intelligence, and my background is in remote sensing science and environmental sciences in general. Space Intelligence, I act as the liaison between the commercial team and our science team to ensure that our products are meeting client needs as well as the market fit at the moment. I'd like to introduce our three speakers, and then we'll get right into some questions and discussion. So our three speakers today, first we have Anna Dorangrica. She's the Program Manager for Gender Equality at the Union for the Mediterranean. She's a senior expert in programming, monitoring, and evaluation at the EU program level on social inclusion and economic development, with a specific focus on women and youth. So welcome, Anna. It's nice to see you again. Our second panelist is Gladys H. Morales Guevara. She's the Global Head of Innovation for the International Fund for Agricultural Development, where she leads the design and implementation of innovative initiatives and partnerships that positively affect poor rural people. She's also the regional ambassador in Italy of the Global Blockchain Business Council, and welcome, Gladys, as well.
Thank you, Alexis.
And our final panelist of this session is Sunita Pitambar. She's the Associate Director of Infrastructure, Climate Change, and Gender Mainstreaming at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. She's an experienced policy advisor with a strong background in international development and gender and inclusion. And welcome, Sunita, as well.
Thank you.
Perfect. So let's get things kicked off. Anna, we'll start with you in the session with an opening question here around what's being done at the Union for the Mediterranean to support women entrepreneurs, both with climate finance, but as well as other mechanisms of support that would encourage women-led innovation to address climate solutions.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for inviting me on behalf of the Union for the Mediterranean, which is an intergovernmental organization of 43 member states covering European and non-European countries. And we have been working more actively in the last 2-3 years in the framework of what is our, let's say, guiding policy, which is what has been discussed in the previous panel, the twin transition, the green and tech transition, but with a specific focus on making this transition a just transition. And this is why we have been focused particularly on the involvement of women and young people when we talk about the elaboration of the public policy on climate and environment. Talking about the specific focus of this session, when we refer to women entrepreneurs, we have been developing two main lines of actions, one more at policy level, one more at project level. In terms of policy level, what we do is to work with our stakeholders, which are mainly the representative of national government from the 43 member states, and more particularly with our donors, which are the Swedish, Spanish, and German agency mainly, supporting us for women economic empowerment, to be sure that the gender lens and the gender perspective is taken into account when discussing the policy in terms of climate and environment. What does it mean concretely? This means that when there is discussion and negotiation in terms of national action plan for climate, or if we are talking about developing specific tools, regulatory framework of new initiative at national and regional level, we are making sure that the women are there, not only in terms of checking the box in terms of gender balance, but really bringing the solution and what the other panelists were saying, I think Ruba, from the local perspective, which is quite important. Just to give an example, we have been working with our partners to bring the gender perspective in the framework of the MEDCOP and the COP29, which is the bigger, let's say, framework. And I had the pleasure to meet Sunita 2 years ago in Egypt. But this is not enough. We have to follow up in terms of implementation, in terms of monitoring. So what we have been done, we have been used different type of instrument and tools. First of all, we have just awarded 5 projects at regional level with GIZ support, focus on green skills for young women-led business. This means that we are going to target almost 1,500 people in the region in supporting accelerators, startups, and micro small enterprises working on green transitions by providing them with green skills and access also to innovative solutions. Another initiative that we are developing right now, and we will present it between November and December this year, is to launch a community of practice at regional level on gender, environment, and climate. What we want to do in the framework of this community of practice, that will be a policy actions, meaning in terms of supporting not only women to make advocacy when we talk about public policy and environment and climate, but to involve and to provide capacity building to who is in charge of developing the public policies in order to give them the capacity to embed and to implement a gender-sensitive policy. Just to give an example, what does it mean to do gender budgeting when we think about climate mitigation adaptation strategy with the gender lens perspective? This is for the policy level. For our main target, meaning the women-led business, we are going to provide them with capacity buildings on how to access to new climate solutions. And this is related to what was discussed before, the link between the technology and the climate solution. But this requires money, this requires funds. And this is what we are going also to do, is to mobilize donors and stakeholders who are interested in investing. Unfortunately, especially the MENA region, we know, is one of those regions where the investment, the private investment in the women-led business is one of the lowest at global level. But at the same time, it's one of the region, and someone from Jordan, I think, was saying this, which is where there is highest percentage of women graduate in STEM, even more than in Europe. So the idea is, from one side, you have this human capital. From the other side, you need to mobilize funds to give possibility to this human capital to become more actors in the economic sector, not only by accessing to labor market, but also to develop their business. And how to do this? This means networking, this means partnership, this means mentorship program, as someone else was saying. And we are going to provide this kind of capacity building and training in 2024 and 2025 for women entrepreneurs, but involving also financial actors. That could be IFC and World Bank, that could be EBRD, of course, but also central banks. Especially central banks and commercial banks are becoming more and more interested in investing on women entrepreneurs, and where there is also an obligation to fulfill the criteria for ESG, environmental, social, and governance standard everywhere. These are pushing and obliging somehow to also invest on women. So the challenge will be how to make this obligation and added value, how to make it impactful, and how to balance also somehow the social impact that this will be done. And this is another area where we are going to intervene, because we want to link the dimension of green transition and the climate solutions with the social impact business. So the idea is to put together the focus on social innovation and innovation technology. And to do this, we will launch a specific regional agenda on women in the agri-food sector from 2024 to 2026 to support women in the agri-food change in order, from one side, to prevent food insecurity, but from the other side, to make the agri-food sector more sustainable in terms of mitigation and adaptation vision. And in this case, the focus will really be take into account that we are talking about women living in rural areas, on social innovation, on the link with local communities, but at the same time, the possibility to access to new technology. Because the previous speakers were saying about the added value of the artificial intelligence, the smart technology. Everybody talk about Industry 4.0, but at the same time, if the people don't have the means to access to these tools, the risk is that the gender gap will be increased. And I stop here, and maybe I will come back after for the second round of questions. But I'm available for any clarification. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anna. It's really exciting to hear about the mentorship programs and the innovation programs coming up this year and next year. And I do hope a lot of people take advantage of those because, as you say, it's really important to get the unique perspectives of local people and women in policy and innovation. Moving on to Gladys now. Could you tell us a bit more about IFAD's model to supporting innovation through a combined approach? And by that, I mean both financing and technical assistance. As Anna was saying, the technical side is also crucial for rural people, and ensuring, crucially, affordability and accessibility of those innovations and those new products to the same people.
Thank you so much, Alexis, for the invitation, and thank you to everyone that has joined us this afternoon to discuss this important theme. Before I start, I would like to just give you some figures about the social innovation industry and why it is important that we invest on it. First of all, social enterprises are creating 200 million jobs across various sectors, from agriculture to financial services every year. And this particular industry is twice the size of the advertising industry. $2 trillion are producing revenue from the social innovation industry. So it's a growing industry with a lot of interest, and we see that also in the new generations, their interest in not only taking advantage of opportunities, but also building opportunities and creating opportunities for themselves and for others. So in that sense, I think that in terms of the context, it's important also to provide the context of all the opportunities that are out there for young people in terms of social innovation. Then when it comes to agriculture, one of the challenges that we have in development is the amount of youth that are leaving rural areas and are moving to urban areas because of the lack of opportunities in rural areas. That is indeed a challenge for food systems and for international development. So it is really fundamental that we address that challenge, and we work with the private sector, with governments, and with civil society to ensure that we continue to create opportunities, job opportunities for youth in rural areas and in agriculture. When we talk about agriculture, it's not only about agriculture, it's about the whole ecosystem of agriculture that has very interesting opportunities for youth. And for that reason, we engage into innovation challenges that attract competition from different areas of the globe and select the best innovations to provide with potential solutions to our challenges. And within that ecosystem, you have not only small-scale farmers, but the youth in those rural areas can become partners in helping us with the adaptation and with the adoption of new technologies, with offering financial services that support inclusion initiatives. Also, they help us providing information about how to overcome and how to become more resilient to climate change. I enjoyed very much the presentation from the previous challenge about the advantages that are now present with artificial intelligence and with geospatial information. But for a small-scale farmer to be able to assimilate and to take full advantage of these opportunities, it takes training, it takes technical assistance, and it takes trust. And it's very difficult for an international organization or for a private sector company to arrive in a community and build that trust overnight, especially when you're introducing something that is completely new in terms of technologies, in terms of the business model, and in terms of the way that people do their things on a day-to-day basis. So working with youth, but also with the elderly, because the elderly are actually the holders of trust in communities, and making sure that we have that intergenerational fertilization and that participatory approach in the community is fundamental. So it's the elderly that help us building the trust in the community, but again, it's youth that those are our ambassadors in terms of adoption and making sure that we work with them to make our products also user-friendly. That's when we were talking about accessibility and being user-friendly. Then there is a matter of affordability. And for that, we work with supporting the private sector through our innovation challenges, providing financing so that the financing is an incentive for them to go to areas where they wouldn't go otherwise, right? Marginalized areas, very remote areas where the private sector would probably not be eager to invest. But if given the right incentives, then they're willing to invest in these areas or to make products and make that last leap of investment in products that can be used by small-scale farmers. Together with our financing, Again, we also offer coaching and mentoring, but we don't offer this alone as IFAD. We take advantages of fora like this to create new partnerships. And one of the partnerships that we have is with other IFIs, with the Inter-American Development Bank, with the World Bank, with the Asian Development Bank, and even with the European Space Agency. We have created this alliance called the Moonshots for Development. Through that alliance, we offer financing, fast track so that these startups and these private sector companies that go through the innovation challenge can have, again, a fast track to financing mechanisms offered by these international financial institutions. But in addition to that, we offer also coaching. And the coaching is on behavioral design, because we want to make sure that these products are being designed with the user in mind, receiving the feedback on a constant basis, and make sure that we are adapting the product and making it user-friendly and accessible to users, but also on lean innovation and on making sure that these technologies are inclusive. One of the services of our partner, the Inter-American Development Bank, with one of their assessment tools, is about analyzing the AI algorithms and making sure that they are inclusive, that they are not somehow excluding actually target groups that we aim to serve. So that's quite important. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of partnerships. My last point is going to be about how we structure our innovation challenges. In addition to financing and to technical assistance, we also do life cycle analysis and stage gate assessments. So we are working on a continuous basis with the teams and with the companies to make sure that we meet with them and we address challenges and barriers early on. And through that conversation, we support them whenever we can, not only with financing, with technical assistance, but sometimes, the only thing that they need sometimes is, can you write a letter to the mayor? Because, we would like to be able to have this community assembly, and we haven't been able to gather everyone. Can we get government support? So sometimes it's a small thing, but if you don't engage into that conversation with the startups, with the local innovators, then by the time that you arrive and you do your supervision mission, it can be too late. So those conversations and that continuous monitoring and dialogue with the innovators that we support help us to identify challenges and barriers through the process so that we can address them early on. Thank you.
Thanks, Gladys. It's really great to hear about that connection post Innovation Accelerator, where you are helping provide that financial link. I think that's a gap that's really important that we need to fill. We can't leave startups hanging after these innovation programs with no help post. Moving on to Sunita now. From EBRD's perspective, are you able to share a bit more on the programs and best practices you have for supporting women's entrepreneurship within the context of climate action, and how the gender mainstreaming and women's inclusion can successfully contribute to climate innovation and investment?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alexis. And I wanted to thank also AIWF and Space Intelligence for welcoming us and giving us this opportunity to speak at this important forum. I think I've seen all of the very interesting questions, and I think the discussions are very helpful as well to understand better our work that we are jointly trying to develop. Maybe just to share a little bit about what the EBRD does for some of the colleagues. EBRD is one of the MDBs based here in London, and the bank is focusing in majority, almost 80 to 90% on private sector investments, and then in some cases, public sector investments, but the majority of the investments for EBRD are supporting private sector clients, corporates, SMEs, partner financial institutions, and the SMEs ecosystem as well. So I think this was an important sort of clarification that I wanted to provide, because our work in terms of gender equality, promoting equality of opportunities, is very central to getting private sector companies to do more on gender equality. And I think this is an area that is quite important in all of the conversations as we have seen today. We are guided by our gender equality strategy. So for the EBRD, we have two strategies that guide our work. The first one is the gender equality strategy, which really has put the bank's ambition to go green in all our investments, combined with ideas and in actions that are also green investments, which are also gender responsive. So this is very important for us. And we are looking through our business processes and the gender marker system, which we call the Gender Smart Tag, to have at least 40% of our investments by the end of next year to be gender smart. So this would be gender smart in all sectors, but also having a climate component. So this was a very important area that we have been developing over the last 3 to 4 years. We are also guided by our equality of opportunity strategy, which is an innovation in itself, because just right after COVID, coming out of COVID, we all as institutions realized that the kinds of external shocks that really have driven and deepened inequalities has changed the way human capital priorities are designed, policy interventions are designed, gender equality issues have been affected. There's been, at the time, we saw a lot of the gains that we had made on women's economic empowerment had also been affected. So the equality of opportunity strategy really tries to address those external shocks, climate change being one of them, and how does it sort of contribute to the inequalities, but also how does it create new opportunities. So again, this is a very important area for us to engage from the inclusion human capital perspective, and together the two strategies really help us to support our investments. To meet our ambition to promote gender equality in the climate nexus, we have developed key programs and investment opportunities, which I thought I'd share a little bit here with all of the colleagues. The first one that we are very actively supporting and very proud of is our work on the green cities. So really, this is a very big and important flagship program for the bank. And what we try to do is support in the countries of operations of the EBRD cities which have the ambition to become more and more green in terms of the kinds of infrastructure, developing their urban planning systems, their access to services, the kinds of services infrastructure. So where the cities themselves have an ambition to go green, we support them to make sure that the green ambitions are also gender responsive. So for example, in certain cases, we have, for example, in Tbilisi, Georgia, we have supported the city to have more and more e-vehicles, e-buses, e-mobility as public transport. And here we have also been able to bring in the women's economic empowerment component, gender equality, by supporting the municipality to train female bus drivers, which has really been a very important contribution to the Green Cities mandate, but also for other cities to adopt this kind of model, which has become quite an important enabler. And again, this was an innovation at the time when we did this project about a few years ago, because there hadn't been any opportunities for women to engage in these new clean energy vehicles sector. So with that, we have been able to also scale up a little bit in other sectors as well, in energy transition as well. For example, where we are working in the just transition space. So for example, in Egypt, the EBRD is leading the energy transition pillar, and under this pillar, we are helping to understand, using also the support of AI, what are the new skills that are emerging in the country's renewable energy ambition, and where are the new skills that we can start to build human capital opportunities, green skills, sort of contributing to new certification as well. Because as we support the renewable energy transition, we also need to make sure that the sector is supported by the necessary skills to be able to become a growth opportunity as well. Another example that comes to my mind is the bank's program on green economy financing facilities. So again, this is quite a big program that is, we are also partnering with the Green Climate Funds on this. And basically the idea here is that we are, as a bank, supporting financial institutions to benefit from these resources, investments, for them to on lend and to invest in green businesses. So this is in a very short and easy way to understand. Partner financial institutions borrow from the bank to be able to on lend to SMEs, which also have the ambition to go green. Here, we have made a big difference because we are supporting female entrepreneurs who are starting in their startup stage or already advanced stages of their businesses, who actually want to go green, because going green provides them with other opportunities as well as growing into new sectors. So here, what we've done is we've supported over 2,700 female sub-borrowers to benefit from these GEF facilities, as they are called. And this has been done in about 18 countries of operations in the EBRD regions, and to promote their businesses to go green, but also even contributing to household energy efficiency opportunities by these lines of investments as well. We have also supported almost 1,000 loan officers and management of these partner financial institutions to become trained in reaching out to more female sub-borrowers as clients, as bankable clients as well in their efforts. This has been a very important area for us because we see more and more partner financial institutions committing themselves to their businesses to go green, but also becoming more and more gender responsive. And this is the kind of impact we are hoping to drive through our efforts. We also support, as I mentioned, in cases where companies also want to, especially in the energy sector, want to be able to promote the role of women in engineering, or women who want to aspire to become engineers. So how do we bring in corporates, companies to lead on efforts to promote more and more women in the STEM disciplines? And we've done this in Turkey with the Borusan Energy Investment Project, where we have got the support of the company to actually launch a mentorship and a scholarship program for young women to enter into the STEM disciplines and get workplace experience as well. So this has been quite an important area for us, and we are growing more and more in our support to these companies to lead in the STEM disciplines and promoting gender equality. Related to that is our work on the Gender Equality Climate Action Accelerator. And this is where I met Anna at the COP27 in Egypt. We developed the Gender Equality Climate Action Accelerator. The Gender Equality and Climate Action Accelerator has been a game changer because it allows companies, in line with the Paris Agreement, Lima Work Program Gender Action Plan, to assess their gender gaps in their companies and identify, in line with their climate aspirations, where are the gaps, where are the commitments in terms of what they want to change, and report it back to any ESG reporting requirements, public disclosure reporting requirements, investor profile requirements. And this has helped really to bring companies again to do more and more in terms of the gender equality and climate nexus. I have much more to say, but I'll just stop here and take any questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sunita. We've got a few coming in here online, and we've got maybe 3 or 4 minutes, so we'll be quick in trying to answer some of these. One of the ones that I'm interested to hear more about as well is how you think that we can dismantle the social and structural challenges when it comes to women participating in agriculture, especially in leadership roles, and to ensure that they actually profit from these programs. So Anna or Gladys, do you want to take maybe a minute to discuss that?
Thank you, Noor, because I know Noor also from previous experience, so thank you for the question. What we plan to do is to work with local actors, because we are not going to implement any pre-defined project without consulting the local community. This means the Women Business Association, the women networks, women means the final beneficiaries. There are projects that have been implemented in this case in Egypt, in rural areas, that have been working well in terms of giving access to a financial and digital inclusion for women, developing new application, developing new technology, but adapted to the need of women in rural areas. And we are planning to do something similar. This means working with the national institution, working with the donors who are already implementing activity there, because we don't want to replicate something that EBRD or IFAD or other donors are going to implement this. Because often you discover that there are 3 different projects focusing on the same area with the same target group. It doesn't make sense if you don't think about a way to capitalize all these activities. So just to mention what Gladys was mentioning about your innovation challenge, your financial your technical assistance and financial innovation. For us, it will be fundamental to know more in order to exactly think how to get the final beneficiaries in order to work with the local community to overcome also the social norms. For sure, is a big barrier when you want to implement women economic empowerment projects. And I stop here because I think Gladys want to add something.
Just very quickly, Anna and Alexis, thank you so much. A special thanks to Noor for the question. I agree with Anna that partnerships are fundamental, but also scanning the environment and making sure that you're not duplicating efforts, as Anna mentioned, is quite important. Once you identify that there are efforts already in place, I agree with Anna that the establishment of partnerships and making sure that you build synergies. One agency on their own, one agency is not able to do everything. So it does require concerted effort. It does require concerted action for us to be able to achieve the goals that we aim to achieve. Because we are very conscious of those partnerships, we have teamed up with the International Land Coalition and with agencies such as the European Space Agency for data collection efforts. I appreciated the Noor sharing the data about land rights of women and their contribution to the economy. So through a project that we have in the Philippines and is now being replicated in Brazil, the team that is called Land Monitor, this is a team of the IFAD, the International Land Coalition, and civil society in the countries, they were able to prove with data, and this is women working for women, to ensure that this data is provided and negotiations are, take place with the government. They were able to prove that if you give land rights to women, then agricultural productivity increases. And that's major. And this is not just a statement, it's not just advocacy, and it's not just only about doing the right thing. This is the smart thing to do, because with data, you're proving that actually agricultural productivity increases, the community is better off overall, and of course, there are gains then at the national level. So I think it's the combination of working with women, the data collection was, and the project was designed by women and for women. So it's a combination of civil society action, private sector action, international organizations, and government concerted effort again, but the decisions were made based on data and evidence. Thank you.
Maybe Dr. Moyer, if I can just come in here as well quickly. We, as EBRD, we're also, I think my fellow speakers have mentioned it, partnerships are super important. We are part of the UN Women Organized Generation Equality. And under that, we are part of the Feminist Action for Climate Justice. And as EBRD, we're the only MDB leading and co-leading under that action coalition. And here we've been able to work together with some of the government institutions, civil society organizations as well, to try and prioritize and push through the commitments that are needed at the global level to understand how we can further deepen gender equality action points and harmonize actions around those. So that was one example I wanted to share. But very quickly, in Morocco, we are also supporting through one of our investments in the Sais and Garret region. How do we organize women into water user associations around the irrigation investments that we are supporting, and also bringing in the Ministry of Agriculture to also help them to deepen that engagement. So just wanted to share that example because I think this is a very important point. Thank you.
Great. Thanks to all our panelists. I will now hand over to Sophie, who will introduce the panelists for our third session.
Many thanks, Alexis, and hello to all. I am Dr. Sophie Flack-Prain, and I am the Reporting and Insights Lead here at Space Intelligence. And I will be the host for this panel on green skills in education and employment. So I'd just like to start by introducing the fantastic panelists we have joining us today. First to introduce is Tala Alem. Tala is the Sustainability Lead for Saudi Arabia at PepsiCo. She has been driving the sustainability agenda across the business in Saudi under the umbrella of PepsiCo and their positive global sustainability framework. She is responsible for really crafting the narrative in Saudi across agriculture, water, energy, plastics and packaging, and really highlighting PepsiCo's efforts across these different pillars. Next on our panel is Gemma Carr. She is the Workforce Services Industry Lead for Energy, Utilities and Resources at PwC. She has over 10 years experience advising large listed and private companies on their reward structures and approaches that incentivize, attract and retain talent. And then we also have Professor Francesca Borgonovi. She is the head of the skills analysis team and the OECD Centre for Skills, where she leads work on the OECD Skills Outlook. In addition, she is the British Academy Global Professor at University College London. Thank you very much all for joining. Really exciting to have you with us today. I'd like to kick off with a question on skills first, and I'll put this to Gemma. So in terms of key technical and soft skills and values, which of those do you believe are essential for emerging leaders in the climate sector to develop in order to really make a significant impact?
Thanks, Sophie, and hello everyone. Great to be here. Yeah, I think it's a really, really important question. And in my role as Workforce Services Lead for Energy, Utilities and Resources companies at PwC, I work with a number of HR leaders in those companies. And skills and values are such key topics that we hear coming up again and again, both with regards to their own businesses, but also across the supply chain. And those conversations are around how the skills landscape is changing and how quickly, as well as just a general concern around the shortage of the key skills needed now and in the near future and beyond in order to progress and deliver the energy transition. And so I think from those discussions, I think the skills being called on by these companies to build the leadership and workforce of the future, I think center around two core fundamentals. And it, probably no surprise, but the first one definitely is obviously around STEM skills in general. You can perhaps go a level below that to talk about cyber, digital, technology, new ESG and green skills. But it is these more specialist skills that we know businesses need either now or in the very near future in order to deliver on their strategies. PwC ran what we call our Hopes and Fears survey a few months ago, which is a global survey, and we had over 2,500 responses from employees of energy, utilities and resources companies. And 80% said they believed their job requires specialist training and skills. And that was 10% higher than the overall survey. So there's definitely a recognition that these more specialist skills are going to be needed. But the other skill set, which I think is going to be so core and important, is around agility and adaptability. And I actually personally believe that STEM skills inherently support those things as well. But essentially the ability and openness to upskill quickly in different areas and then utilize those skills quickly, I think really will be quite really fundamental and really lead to success. When I talk to clients, I hear examples around project management, being able to move around different divisions and play that role across people and tech and kind of bring those skills to life in those environments, or even being multi-skilled and just being able to respond to the skills needs and gaps of the moment in a company. And then also actually being able to lead teams through change is another one we find that's really important given the pace of change is where it is. And it really is that pace of change in ways of working that is driving that need for agility. Also from our Hopes and Fears survey, we had basically half, 49% of employees in the energy companies say they have had to learn new tools and technologies in order to do their job in the last 12 months. So I really think that pace of change is very high. I think it will continue. If anything, it may even get faster. So I think being positioned to be part of that will really have a great impact. And to the extent that one can find that, alignment in terms of values around that pace of change, of being able to adapt and really embrace that change but also embrace the diversity of thought and skill that it brings, I think could have really big impact on what these companies are trying to do.
Many thanks, Gemma. I think that idea of adaptability really reflects our experience at Space Intelligence within this space as well. I wondered if I could also pose the same question to Tala, so just around what skills you feel are really important within this space.
Sure. So thank you all for having me here. It's great to be part of such an important discussion. So I work at PepsiCo, and PepsiCo, as you can imagine, it's one of the largest food and beverage companies in the world. And with that kind of scale comes a big responsibility. And once the global sustainability strategy was rolled out, and each market had to take that on and set KPIs for themselves and then adapt it on the ground. And this is, again, across our entire operation, where you can imagine majority of it, we're looking at very operational KPIs and targets that we're trying to achieve, both on energy, on water, on packaging. It's quite technical. But the way that it was rolled out, and I thought that PepsiCo did this very well, is that I'm one person within the sustainability team that is in Saudi, but it is not the way that it's rolled out is that the KPIs are instilled within each department. So you have supply chain working towards specific targets that are set both regionally and globally. You have finance that are aligned with those same targets and are moving in the same direction. We have franchise that is doing the same, the agro team, and so on. So what that allows to do is exactly what Gemma was mentioning, which is kind of try to accelerate that internal change or adaptability within the company. I believe, so if you ask us this year, so this is now 2 years, 3 years after the sustainability strategy was rolled out globally, I would say we're in a very good position today. We're accelerating on the ground, and every day I'm surprised by how much curiosity, acceptance, and openness that the team has displayed. But to be very honest, I think the beginning was quite challenging because I would say even especially with teams that are a bit more technical. So when you come to the supply chain or people running the operation in the plants, it was very challenging to introduce completely new concepts. To be fair, that the entire world is learning at the same time. So it wasn't just PepsiCo, we're all trying to out together. And then embed so much within the business where it starts to impact efficiency. It starts to impact the way that they're running business, and they've been running an operation for many, many years. So I would say the biggest challenge was really instilling or having a strong understanding first, of course, of the climate science of it and the data, but also the why. So why are we doing this? Why are we doing this now? Despite the fact that it might have immediate in many of the cases, I would say there's short-term impacts that could appear to be negative for the business that you know that you're doing for a long-term investment. So having that kind of internal championship or advocacy was, I think, very, very important. Now, so that's just how we managed the change. But in terms of skills, I think before I had this role, the current role that I had, I always thought that it would only chemical engineers that would go into sustainability. But then today, seeing my colleagues in the plant, seeing my colleagues in finance and in legal that are driving the sustainability objectives and changes within the company, make you realize that yes, while the technical skills are very important, and Gemma, I think, highlighted that beautifully, so did the panel right before, but I also think that sustainability as a concept is looking at how we're doing business and asking ourselves to be better. Now, how that actually materializes and comes to life, I think will be different from department to department, and we're already seeing a lot of trends in green financing, in green law, and so with equipping it, I would say that it's more than just the skills would be curiosity and openness to read data and understand data. But then more than that, I think it's personality traits and knowing that it's within your department. You're not learning a completely new function. It's within your function. How can that help drive those objectives?
Thank you very much for opening up really around the challenges that you face on the initial implementation. I think that was really interesting and kind of speaks to a lot of people that as humans, I think sometimes we just don't like change, and really trying to encourage that and see the progress that you've made is fantastic. A question to Francesca next. Thinking about kind of before people enter the workplace, how might schools and university-led STEM education better incorporate climate and sustainability topics into the core curriculum? And similarly, what do you think they're doing well currently in this field?
Thank you so much, and thanks for the invitation. I think it's great to come after Gemma and Tala, because in the work that we've done at the OECD on the Skills Outlook 2023 on skills for a resilient green and digital transition, we looked at emerging skill needs that result from climate change itself, but also from climate change adaptation policies, and how schools, vocational education and training, and universities can actually ensure that we have the right pipeline of skills to fulfill emerging job opportunities, but also perform the tasks that the same jobs will need to incorporate to become relevant in a greener tomorrow, let's say. So one of the things that has emerged so far is that technical skills are important. And one important dimension of environmental sustainability are, for example, scientific knowledge and abilities. And when we look at data on upper secondary school students, 15-year-olds in the OECD-led PISA study, we see that essentially around 18, 10, 15-year-olds manage at the very least baseline levels of understanding of science. At the same time, when we look at how many combine this level of understanding of science with actually the attitude of caring about the environment, understanding what are environmental challenges, and the willingness to take action in a sense to foster environmental objectives, that number drops considerably to 1 in 3. So we lose essentially 5 in 10 students, not necessarily from the knowledge part, the technical part, but very much from the socio-emotional and attitudinal part. And one of the big lessons we find is that at the moment, in a sense, schools are still prioritizing I would say, cognitive skills and academic skills. But what's important is actually to ensure that young people have the willingness to make change for the environment. So some education systems are very much using adaptation policies, for example, to adapt school buildings as a way to not necessarily overload the curriculum, but actually make sure that young people use the science knowledge, the math skills, their understanding of how to search for information online, how to collaborate with others to foster environmental objectives. Another thing that is happening is investing in career guidance and orientation programs, because it's important to make sure that young people actually select educational pathways that will ensure that we have the right skill mix, and probably combining a lot, I would say, of the more STEM educational pathways with STEAM, so also incorporating aspects such as arts education, philosophy, that actually help young people interrogate themselves about the objectives of what they're doing, and actually being able to collaborate with others. And finally, I would like to point out that an important aspect of the green transition more generally is actually vocational education and training. So the OECD is investing quite heavily also in making sure that we have the right skill mix among those that will have to service, for example, hybrid and electric vehicles. The training of these individuals needs to change, particularly as we accompany the safety concerns that come with the transition, and the time period when we have combustion engines and electric vehicles.
Thank you so much, Francesca. That was incredibly interesting. I have a follow-up question really related to that. So I think we'll maybe just jump straight to that now because I'm conscious of time. Certainly one of the questions that I hear a lot from younger colleagues is this decision between going and to gain further qualifications or to stay in the workplace and gain work experience. I will put this to the rest of the panel as well, but interested to hear your thoughts on what individuals, what should they factor into their decision making when looking at these kinds of options?
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
I mean, different education systems offer different opportunities for making this trade-off, or actually not making this trade-off. So, for example, the opportunity of engaging in apprenticeships is very important in some countries, and to the extent that companies have personnel that is trained in actually providing the skills development opportunities, this is a fantastic way in which individuals individuals learn. Let's not forget that formal learning is only one part of the way in which we learn. And in fact, most of the learning, particularly in our adult life, comes from informal and non-formal learning. This is particularly important today with the green and digital transition, because oftentimes education systems are lagging behind in terms of the training opportunities that are being given the changes in labor markets and societies. So in that context, I think that personally, I would encourage young people to really focus on building solid foundation skills, the right attitude, as we were saying before, to be able to collaborate with others and be ready to learn across our lives. The other big transition is actually the demographic transition. Luckily, we are all living longer. And so the period that is the distance, I would say, between the time period when we gained initial qualifications and the number of years that we're going to remain in the labor market and the innovations that luckily are occurring means that we need to rely more and more on a lifelong learning approach to skills development. And often this occurs in companies, and we can learn from countries that have strong opportunities to actually develop these in the context of companies.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Gemma, I'm wondering if you had any additional thoughts on this point?
Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, completely as Francesca said. I mean, I'm hearing a number of companies and their HR teams consider reviewing or significantly expanding their own internal training and development programs, even collaborating together actually to do that, and essentially foster and invest in a talent pool that they will all inevitably end up drawing on. And some I think are, very much working with universities or your education bodies on this. So that actually that choice that you spoke of in the question, Sophie, maybe doesn't actually exist, and actually you can get the best of both. The other thing I would say people at that point in their career is around the purpose and values point that I think you raised right at the start. So we know a lot of companies in the energy sector have already or are currently carefully looking at their corporate purpose and carefully articulating their values as companies. And I think in that context, we know that purpose and values does matter to a lot of prospective employees, certainly the newer generations coming into the workforce. So for people facing that decision of what to do next, I think finding an employer where those values really resonate and where possible, actually align, I think can really help somebody make that decision of where to go and what to do.
Thank you so much, Gemma. We will.
If I could. Oh, sorry. So
I
just wanted to add something.
Yeah,
I think there's also a really sweet spot. So I can't speak to education as much as my other panelists, but I think there's also a sweet spot between universities and employment, where there's a big focus now on entrepreneurship, especially in the sustainability and climate tech space. And I think there's a lot of tracks in which universities and schools are now encouraging things like hackathons and really encouraging new ideas for people to explore new ideas within that, even at a very early age, because even ideation, I think, is really quite big in sustainability, super important for corporations, for the private sector, for governments. And so for a young person that's really interested in getting into that field, I think that that's a very important track, because it can give you that choice. So you can pursue your education. Essentially, it's a different form of education while you're actually setting up a business and gaining real life experience, very hands-on in a topic that a lot of other potential job opportunities will open up for you in that space.
Absolutely. We've actually been involved in mapathons at Space Intelligence, so similar kind of idea. Just to say to the audience, please do pop your questions in the Q&A box, because we'll be coming to those soon. I had an extra question I just wanted to put to Tala first, and then we'll see how much time we've got after that. I'm just interested to know, for you personally, what skills have you found most useful at that transition between education and employment? And were there any skills that were maybe immediately apparent as being useful and came up later as actually being really valuable?
So I actually come from a very different background. I specialized in corporate communications and advertising. Maybe that wasn't so apparent when I was hired and selected for this role. I think that my boss really had a vision. And I think that the missing skill, maybe that specifically our company and other companies I see struggle with, is storytelling and content creation in sustainability. sustainability. I don't think it's very apparent, but once you think about it, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of very technical that is being put out and being shared, and taking that information, being able to translate it in a way that can appeal to a wide audience and be able to move between your stakeholders, whether it's mental stakeholders, internal stakeholders, taking that information and be able to rally and champion and for it. I would even go further and say, when it comes to sustainability policy, having to tell a story to be able to simplify very complex ideas and complex thoughts into facts that are tangible and are actionable. I think that's only grow as we move forward. We're seeing the trend with younger people, and I think Dr. Francesca said it very well. I think the passion that we're seeing in young people allows them to be advocates and vocal on these important topics that might seem a bit daunting or complicated in the beginning.
Completely agree. And yeah, I totally agree on that aspect of being able to build a narrative and take people along with you on things that can often be quite like technical topics. That skill of being able to communicate that effectively is so important. Can I pose that same question to Gemma first as well?
Thanks, Sophie. And yeah, I think what Salah said is so brilliant. I wish I'd thought of that one. That's a really good one, and that ability to communicate, because we really do foster that in our grads coming in, and that it's so important as consultants to be able to do that, to be able to take people on that journey and problem solve. But the other one I had on my mind was really come back to what I said before around that adaptability point. Just given the pace of change across everything, I think the ability to learn new things quickly and be okay with the pace of change, which I think we said earlier can be really hard for some, but also supporting and leading your teams through that and providing that really supportive environment, I think are really important skills worth honing. But I really liked how Tala said earlier around curiosity, because I think that curiosity point, it really can foster diversity of thought and inclusivity, right? Because you're just curious about more things and curious about people that you work with. And I have seen more and more how an inclusive environment where essentially everyone is supported to thrive really does, it drives the productivity, it drives the innovation, and it drives those creative solutions that I don't think one person comes up with on their own. And to some really pretty like tough problems, which, you know, absolutely, obviously things like the energy transition, it needs that diversity of thought anyway. So I think those sorts of things have just become so apparent to me through my career around how you bring out the best in people.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of feeds back into Francesca's point before around how we can really start that in the education process as well. It shouldn't curiosity shouldn't wait until we get to the workplace. It should really start with our young people. Francesca, I don't know if you had any additional points on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe because I am an education person, I was going to say curiosity to talk to others. I mean, one of the biggest lessons that my philosophy professor from high school gave me was, you know, no matter what, I want you to be able to talk to anyone about anything. And I think for me, the biggest skill is the capacity to listen. And the reason for that is that environmental problems are inherently complex. Of course, we need to follow the scientific evidence. Of course, this is driven by technological innovation, etc. But it does impact in very tangible ways the identity of some individuals. If we think about mining communities, for example, or, you know, how certain food is related to eating meat, for example. And so not being patronizing for those who have an opinion or a way of doing things that is different, but actually being able to listen to their very legitimate concerns and trying to actually piece together different types of knowledge of concerns and information so that we can actually reach a decision or a way forward that is actually inclusive for all and that is fair to different communities. So I would say capacity to listen as a way to communicate and build consensus.
Absolutely. Just spot on. I don't have any open questions in the question box at the moment. So I do encourage people to jump in. Otherwise, I will carry on asking my own, which I'm more than happy to do. I'll put this one out to the whole group and just jump in if you're happy to answer. I'd be interested in what advice you would give to someone just starting off in their career in green tech.
I think I would again focus on the word curiosity. I know we've mentioned it a few times. I just think it's super important. So I think curiosity and we're living at an age now where data and information is available more than ever. I also think there's a lot more of these forums, events, conferences that people can really attend, and they can because the next big idea often has not been said yet even, and you go to the next, you're a great thought, and then you go to the next one. The technology is moving so fast, and adoption is not moving as fast, and so there's new technologies before we've even adopted them and implemented them. So there's always new information, and I think curiosity is key, because the sustainability sector is so large, and it's taking new forms every day, and knowing where you want to specialize in, I think is important. And then maybe just continuing on, I think specialization, I think we're around the time in this sector where people need, I think you'll have a great benefit if you start specializing around this time. I don't think all of us have had that opportunity or to be fortunate enough to be in that right time, but it's all about timing. And I would say that we're at the beginning of the wave in which specializations will be greatly rewarded. And there's a lot to look into. It depends what you're passionate about. But it all starts, I think, with curiosity.
Absolutely. So we are starting to get some questions in. We'll only have time for a short one, but perhaps the panelists will be able to answer directly to the remaining questions. One that I think perhaps Francesca may be able to answer is, how do you think these green skills that have been highlighted by the panel could be better embedded in the school curricula to ensure that current generations are ready for this green transition? And I know that you have spoke on this already today.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's a nice label, great skills, and probably people will not like what I'm going to say, but I will say that nonetheless. I think one important lesson is be bold and go for that. I think there are no such thing as green skills. It's not new skills. There are new applications, of course, but these are skills that are not inherently new. And I think this is an important message because it signals that it's not that the skills that people had in the past have become redundant. There is an opportunity to build up on the existing skill set, on existing educational program, and make them better fit for purpose. But it's not that the challenge is insurmountable and it's completely out of scope. So it's within our grasp. And in fact, there's a lot of talent that individuals already have, given their work experiences and their educational experiences, that they can actually put to use with different degrees of upskilling and reskilling. And as I said, in terms of what it means for education, a big problem of education is curriculum overload. We keep on piling the curriculum with more and more subjects. And in fact, the skills that the individuals have, if we look at what emerges from large-scale international assessments, is that the levels are going down. And part of that is that we are not maximizing the engagement and learning potential of young people. So one way of doing that is actually to use an approach that is very much problem-based, interdisciplinary, and actually get young people to use the knowledge they have to solve real-life problems and situations with others. And again, in the workplace, we do not work as individuals. We work as teams in different kind of team settings. And that's something, again, that the education system at the moment is not inherently fit for purpose in promoting in all countries. In some countries more than others, I would say.
Fantastic, Francesca. Especially love it whenever anyone starts the response with, not everyone's going to like this. Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for our panel. On behalf of everyone, I'd like to offer a huge thank you for all their insights. I've personally found it incredibly interesting. Final thank you to all our panel members. I am very happy to be able to hand over to Nadra now for some closing remarks and to wrap up what has been a fantastic afternoon of discussions. So Nadra, over to you.
Yes, good day again from wherever you are tuning in. This has been such a wonderful and such a rich discussion. I really learned a lot from it. And the difficult task of having to provide closing remarks and to sum up what has been said, I think is a job that people need to do a PhD in and do a dissertation on. But nonetheless, I will try to do very brief about that. I would like to kind of maybe schedule my remarks in 5 parts. One part is to summarize briefly what has been discussed in terms of skills as was mentioned in several speakers, we are in a changing talent landscape, and everybody is learning, every country is learning, so nobody has an advantage over another one. Of course, some countries are a little bit more endowed to move faster than others. The second point that I want to speak about is the specific skills. The third point that I would like to highlight is why women are needed in this transition, why women are critical to a successful transition. The fourth point that I would like to kind of summarize is why women, how we can help women and how we can utilize their skills and talents to the utmost. And the last point is how we can really tap into the incredibly important talent pool of the youth in this process. So let me begin by, from my notes, from the notes that I took. It's not, I will try to do my best. So in terms of summarizing what are the talents and the emerging landscapes, essentially, I think what was discussed, we could put it into three headings. One is to pursue education and training in green skills, and that includes to seek relevant education, to engage in continuous learning, and to leverage mentorship programs and coaching to the extent possible. In terms of developing and implementing sustainable practices, again, adopt green practices to the extent possible, wherever we can, then to start green enterprises, and I will come back to that again, and to collaborate in networks that could leverage and scale up our activities and our passion and our skills. And the third point in terms of skills is to advocate for and participate in policy making and policy leadership through partnerships and through intellectual frontiers. And that would be to get involved in advocacy. And here I would like to very much highlight what Tala was saying, that communications is very important to be able to tell the story and to move people and to create the urgency for getting involved in the green agenda. Definitely women need to, at least anybody, not only women, but everybody needs to take a leadership role and take this as a point that everyone has a stake in this transition. And again, to provide, to make sure that everybody with every skill and every perspective is included. Now, what are some of the second point was the specific skills? Of course, learning and understanding ecosystems and how the ecosystem functions and how human activity impacts this ecosystem, and how we can, with better understanding of science, of STEM fields, of STEAM fields, as was also mentioned, highlight the how we can adapt and how we can better sort of like address the challenges. Data analytics and of course data management was mentioned quite a bit and is of course at the forefront of the skills that are needed. Again, communication and advocacy was another very critical area that is necessary. Ethical and cultural awareness was mentioned in the process as well. The other issue was, of course, innovation and problem solving. Those are, again, skills that are in very high demand in this area. Now, why is it that this session is taking place, and why is it that we need to focus on the role of women in this transition? A large part of it is that women are increasingly making up a large share of the talent pool, not only in general, but then also in specific. In nearly every country, women are making strides in STEM fields, particularly in the Middle East and North Africa region. I have to stress this. Women do make a large share of the STEM graduates. For instance, I had a chance to, while you were speaking, to kind of Google a little bit. For instance, in the UAE, 56% of STEM graduates are women. In Jordan, I think Ruha was mentioning it, women make up about 50% of the STEM graduates. In Egypt, about a third. In Saudi Arabia, increasingly women are acquiring or making strides in the STEM fields. But over and beyond just acquiring skills, these hard skills, I think that women are very important, I would say, canaries in the minefield type of agents in the green transition. And they are very much involved. They play a central role in their communities and household, they provide a unique perspective of how every individual is impacted and can impact the transition or the projects. They play an important role it was mentioned that local solutions are very important, local and sustainable practices are important. So women are very much at the central to that. They play an important role in grassroots leadership, just simply by the practices and the habits that they can instill in the next generation or even in their surroundings. They do have, as women, react very quickly to the challenges that surround them and that impact their families, and therefore they're usually very good in creative problem solving. Women focus very much on education of the next generation, and therefore important, and that kind of feeds into the adaptation skills for change and in how to adapt for change and how to design and how to implement a sustainable living environment. The next point that I wanted to mention is that, and so why is it that we need to focus on women and bringing in the women, not only for the talent pool, not only because of the central role that they play in their communities, but then also that they have a lot of ideas for innovation. And it was mentioned that several of the, I think the EBRD, as well as IFAD, as well as some OECD, have put in place programs for entrepreneurship. So in other words, women can not only work as contribute their skills in terms of employees and so on, but also in terms of creating the next generation of successful companies, successful, products, platforms, and so on. And therefore, we need to help women advance in these as entrepreneurs as well. And the last point that I wanted to make, sorry, I'm trying to summarize everything within this small or short time that I'm given. And the last point that I would like to make is to bring in the younger generation. I mean, the hope of our hope for a sustainable world. And that was very nicely summarized by Joy, who said that, they, of course, through continuous learning, hands-on experience, but then again, quite a bit through mentorship of the young generation and through helping them to network and to partner with other groups. I hope that I have done justice, or at least I know that I have not done justice to the rich discussion and conversation that took place. But I think that this session was very much needed. I want to thank the AIWF for organizing it, for Space Intelligence to be a co-partner in this, and for all of us to learn from the incredible ideas that were put forward. And hopefully in the future, we will be able to build on this and to come back and to brag about our successes. I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I wish you a good future in this area. And thank you again. Thank you.